Remember how, if anybody on the right mentions that the current demographic change that Europe's going through continues, that the Europeans will be a minority in their own continent, you were called a right-wing conspiracy theorist for that? Well, it turns out that it's fine to state that that's happening as long as you're a leftist and you view it as a positive thing. Here's a leftist TV presenter from the Religion of Peace, I think, explaining to us what Britain's got in store for the future.
This shouldn't have to be said, but I'll say it anyway. Britain is never going to be just white ever again.
Thanks for clearing that one up.
There are a few accounts and a few people out there that want to push the idea of make Britain great again. Some of them actually mean make Britain white again. And that is never going to happen. Make Britain great again? Absolutely. That includes all cultures and societies and races, because that's what Britain looks like now.
I know leftists can be very annoying, but it's worth listening very carefully to what they're saying. She's doing a classic leftist technique here. You either accept the globalist vision of the modern world that's been forced upon you, or you're an evil fascist white supremacist who's not welcome.
So it's better that, whoever it is that's trying to push this idea just scraps it. It's not going to happen, especially when you may have an indigenous population that just doesn't want to procreate and have more children and babies. By default, you are and will eventually be outpopulated by those communities that will have more children.
Yeah, that's what we've been saying for years, but if we raise it publicly, people like you call us evil, racist, fascist, white supremacists.
Also to add that there are millions of ethnic communities globally, and there are just more of those communities in number. So, this is a numbers game at the end of the day. So it's probably better for people to just stop pushing this.
What on earth is that supposed to mean? That you've got larger numbers globally, so you're just going to swamp us with the ethnic hordes and we bow down to you as our new masters?
Which I deem is a very ethno-supreme, almost fascist, racist movement where you're just not accepting anyone that has a different religion, for example, or genuinely like a different race. Britain is never going to be just white or white English ever again. So, we need to have more of those voices that are going to really champion everyone needs to get along and live in a harmonious way and stop making this about what colour skin you are and associating all of these like old tropes to people of colour, because that is exactly what happens. So, I said it.
Yeah, thanks for that profound insight. This lady really is just a child of modern London progressivism. It's the classic leftist dynamic. We're the loving, welcoming ones who just want to build a world of equality and love, and if you're against that, you're a racist, evil fascist. Yet, of course, they forget to mention that they are forcing this undemocratically upon us, that many British people weren't that fussed about immigration until it became an absolutely massive issue with massive numbers and a total lack of integration. Further, women like this are so quick to shame you for noting cultural differences and frictions between people while ignoring them on their very own doorstep. The woman in question, I believe, is from Pakistan originally, and Pakistan has some rather famous issues with India. Now, I'm sure she'll blame Britain and colonisation for that, but the Muslims took over India long before the British even showed up and were far more brutal, and that's why there are issues to this day in my home city of Leicester between Hindus and Muslims. On the subject of Hindus in the UK, British Indians recently had a mass car rally in support of Narendra Modi and his Hindutva movement. Is that them adopting an equalitarian policy in modern Britain? And what about the pro-Palestinian protests which take over London every other weekend? Whose side are we supposed to take there? Are they on the side of equality and diversity, or do they want the interests of Muslims listened to? Of course, you only have to scratch beneath the surface or live a couple of days in the real world to see the flimsiness of the liberal worldview. Yet, as I'm sure you're already aware, this lady doesn't really care too much about truth and coherence. What she's doing is engaging in emotional propaganda to fool you into going along with the mainstream multicultural mass immigration line. And it's always worth being aware in modern politics of the notion of frame. This lady wants to frame this conversation as her and her leftist friends as being multicultural, tolerant and loving and kind, and anyone who disagrees with them as evil white supremacists. That framing is completely illegitimate and unfair. It's perfectly legitimate to want to have a country which speaks to your ancestors, its ancient traditions, and be in the stewardship of its ancient peoples. Doesn't mean you hate anybody else from other countries. Doesn't even mean you won't welcome them in reasonable numbers if they integrate. It simply means that you want what every other country wants on Earth. There's nothing wrong with that. These are just my thoughts, however. Do let me know what you think down below, and do consider subscribing to the channel.